Let's get into it. Episode 653, Sold Not For Sale podcast. Jordan Peterson on the podcast today. As you know, Canada's podcasts are getting regulated, and it's still up in the air what this means, but all we know right now is that every podcast that's making over 10 million in revenue or making about 10 million in revenue has to register with the government by November 28th. This puts Jordan Peterson right in there. He is somebody who is going to have to register his podcast with the government, turn over all sorts of sensitive information to the government about who's listening to his podcast. And Jordan Peterson has released a statement about this. He also took to the airwaves with Piers Morgan to actually talk about Justin Trudeau and what it's like living in Trudeau's Canada. Very interesting clip. He takes Trudeau to task in this clip, and his statement, although it may be brief, really sums up how he feels about this whole situation. Jordan Peterson is seen as a very clean-cut, just really intelligent person, but when you really look at what's going on in Canada and you look at what Jordan Peterson is saying to the government, he is a very, very much a renegade in Canada, very much rebelling the government to the government in Canada. It's something amazing to see, and the fact that there are consequences coming for him as he does this says a lot about what's happening in Canada. Let's get into that really quick. Of course, I got the newest design for you guys. This is the newest one. You haven't seen this one before. If you're ever wondering what MSNBC stands for, here it is. It stands for Mainstream News Brainwashing Citizens. Of course it does. Of course it does. I didn't have to tell you guys that. We have that design in hoodies, t-shirts, tank tops, all that good stuff, men and women. And if you want 10% off, like always, put in the discount code I am Coach Colin, all capital letters, all one word, one L in the name Colin gets you 10% off on us. If you've done that with us already, thank you so much. Let's get to this statement first. Will Jordan Peterson be registering his podcast by November 28th with the government of Canada? Well, it says right here, well, they're not regulating mine. Now, if we go a little lower, up yours, Gaston, and he actually ats Justin Trudeau while posting a picture of Justin Trudeau looking very much like a dictator. This is in response to the regulations that are coming down on him. Again, November 28th. That is what he has to say about that. Now, I know that just seems like a funny thing, and it's like, whatever, he just says he's not doing it. There are going to be consequences for people that don't do this. I don't know what those consequences are, but Jordan Peterson is standing up against this, and thank God for it. Thank God that he's willing to do this. Now, let's jump over to what he had to say on Piers Morgan about Justin Trudeau and about living in Canada under this tyrannical dictator. And you know what? It sounds funny when you say that, and a lot of people use that term loosely, but as Justin Trudeau overreaches over and over and over and over again, you can't see this as, if he's not a full-blown dictator, he's definitely a pre-dictator. Like, this is what dictators do just before they become dictators. He's putting in all the framework so he can actually be a dictator. The last thing that we're missing from him is just him making a rule that he doesn't have to leave office. That's it. And from what I hear, we're getting close to that as well. Let's get into the clip.
Living in Justin Trudeau's Canada, it's a never-ending hallucinogenic, surreal dream. Justin Trudeau's mode of governance is to top each scandal with a bigger scandal. And he's really good at that. And you might say, well, what's wrong with Canadians? And I can tell you what's wrong with Canadians is that Canadians have a very difficult choice to make. They can either wake up and realize that under the jurisdiction of this preposterous narcissist, we've compromised virtually every institution of integrity in Canada, which is a really bitter pill to swallow, or we can assume that everyone who's pointing that out is some sort of conspiracy theorist. And it's way easier for Canadians to swallow the latter story than to actually contend with the true ramifications of the former story. Now, unfortunately, the former story is true. So that's okay.
Well,
It's
what is
playing
extraordinary?
out.
What's
Trudeau
extraordinary
isn't gonna
about?
last long.
I mean, what's extraordinary right now? You've been ordered. I don't even know if that's the right word to use, to take social media training by a Canadian court because you posted tweets criticizing the transgender and body positivity movements. My first question is, I mean, do you intend to do this?
Oh, well, I've got all sorts of evil plans on that front. I mean, at the moment, we've appealed the decision of the court in Canada to allow the college to proceed with their re-education of me. Now, the re-education, what are the criteria of the re-education program is that I'm required to sit down with a social media expert, whatever the hell that is, because that's not a genuine occupation. I don't even know how you define it. And I'm supposed to also, as a clinician, be very careful about how I allow myself to be educated, let's say. I'm supposed to educate myself according to the tenets of scientific investigation, for example, or recognized clinical practice, and social media expert doesn't fit into those categories. Anyways, I'm supposed to sit down with a social media expert, and then I'm supposed to modify my attitude, however I'm supposed to do that, until they're satisfied that I've changed. And, you know, that's not that likely as far as I can tell, because I haven't changed since I was 3 years old, really, in some core elements.
Jordan, it's also preposterous, isn't it? I mean, the idea that in a modern democratic society, which Canada purports to be, the idea they take one of its great thinkers, clinical psychologist, like you're someone who literally is one of the smarter thinkers and brains in the country, and think that they can get a social media expert, whatever that is, to re-educate you about views that you honestly hold about some of the insanity of the gender debate or the insanity of the body positivity debate. The idea that somehow you're in the wrong and you have to be re-educated, that in a way is a form of fascism, isn't it? I mean, it's the kind of Nazism that someone like Trudeau would profess to hate most in the world. And yet he's encouraging the demonization of you for challenging the insanity.
It's the world of evil clowns, man.
The world of evil clowns. Yes. Here's the thing, right? Freedom at a cost. It seems like when we all look at Jordan Peterson, we're just seeing him. He's on Daily Wire. He's releasing his podcast. He's just going about life. He hasn't slowed down, much like Russell Brand right now. He has not slowed down, but there's freedom at a cost. He speaks his mind, and he says what he has to say. He thinks it through, but he makes sure to say it to this massive, massive platform that he has, but it's at a cost. Like he just said, he's in the midst of lawsuits. He's in the midst of people trying to re-educate him and how he uses social media, which is how he writes, which is how he thinks. So, you know, you have to always be careful of that. They talk about re-education in social media, but that's tweets. Your tweets are what you write. What you write is what you think. So they're really trying to re-educate him on the way he thinks. And through it all, he seems fine. He seems like but it's at a cost. You get to speak your mind, but it's at a cost. Freedom costs something. And for a long time, none of us have had to pay anything for freedom. And, you know, that's him included. He's not had to pay anything for freedom for a really long time. And now in Canada and in the US, there is a cost to freedom. You know, there are people who want to re-educate you. I just did a video about Hillary Clinton talking about, and thank God she has no power to do this, but she was talking about how people who support Trump should probably be deprogrammed somewhat, so they do not support him anymore, whatever that means. In Canada, it's actually happening. He spoke against the government. He's supporting the opposition to the current government, and they decided that he has to actually go through re-education. And, you know, Piers Morgan said that it was because he questioned some gender standards, and he said some things. Most of the tweets, and Jordan Peterson has talked about this, most of the tweets that got him branded for re-education were about Trudeau, were about the government. That's when it kicked in. So he said a bunch of things about gender and this and that. that took a toll. People didn't like that, but the re-education only came into play when he started speaking on the government. That's when it came into play. So it's obvious what's happening. You know, the government, and this happens in the United States as well, the government cannot be seen going all the way, reaching all the way down to one person and saying you need to be re-educated. But they can go to an institution that he's a part of, which is like Psychologists of Canada, I believe it's called. They can reach to that organization and say, maybe you should consider re-educating this person. And then they reach down to that person indirectly. There's a lot of that going on. You know, when it comes to like the Constitution, the government can't be seen going against the Constitution, but they can reach out behind the scenes, reach out to organizations like BLM, like various organizations, and those organizations can start attacking people and doing things that may be against the Constitution. It's a dirty game that's going on right now. And I'm glad Jordan Peterson is stepping up. But again, that sentiment that he put out there, up yours, Gaston, he made sure to actually tag Trudeau in that. And Trudeau's not one of those people who sits there and does his own tweets. He's like Biden. He doesn't run his own account. So now the Liberal government that is in power in Canada right now has seen what Jordan Peterson is saying. So come November 28th and on, we're going to see something else happen with Jordan Peterson. And I hope that he triumphs, and I hope that this regulation, I hope everybody who has to actually formally register with the government takes Jordan Peterson's role and just doesn't do it and goes against it. That's it. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comments, of course. And if you haven't liked the video already, like the video. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe. And other than that, I am out.